CA Board of Directors to order at 7 p.m. All right, hello everyone. I'm Janet Evans, Chair of the CA Board. Please remember that this board meeting is being live streamed. You can find tonight's agenda and background materials on the CA Board's webpage. You can also find links to these documents on the YouTube live stream for those that may be watching there. If you are virtual, please mute your microphones and phones in the room unless you're speaking. If you're in the room, please ensure your cell phones are silenced. And your computers are silenced as well because it interferes with the audio. Raise your hands to speak. I will record names in the order in which I will see them. If anyone could help me monitor any chat questions, I would appreciate it. As we move through the meeting, I will introduce each item on the agenda, and before a vote is taken, I will restate a motion as well as who motioned and seconded. If at any point you have trouble hearing me or any other board member, please say so. I will now call roll. Andy.
Present.
Sherry.
Here.
Ginny.
Here.
Dick from the high seas.
Ahoy!
Appropriate
Lynn.
The only thing you could have said.
Lynn.
Here.
Tina.
Not on the high seas, but here.
But here anyway.
Jealous.
Jess.
A little bit.
Here.
Yes.
Eric.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
Vicky.
Here.
And Janet is here. Thank you very much. All right, our timekeeper tonight is Jess, so if she yells at you to quit talking, you must.
Much power.
All right, so now I will announce the closed meetings. CA Board of Directors had a closed meeting on September 20th of the Audit Committee. In attendance, James Young, Dick Bolton, Janet Evans, Andy Stack. The vote to close was 4 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstentions. The meeting was closed under sections 1 and 4 of the Homeowners Association, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel, and consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or legal matters. And this was to review several internal audit reports. The meeting ended at 9:06. CA Board of Directors held a closed meeting on September 23rd. This was a meeting of the Risk Management Committee. In attendance was Lakey Boyd, Jess Duvall, Tina Horn, Susan Krabby. Vote to close was 4 in favor, 0 against. Closed under Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. And this was to discuss the general liability self-insurance program and any active claims. Meeting closed at 6:55. Meeting ended at 6:55 p.m. CA Board of Directors held a closed meeting on September 23rd. In attendance was Dick Bolton, Lakey Boyd, Jess Duvall, Lynn Egan, Janet Evans, Tina Horn, Andy Stack, Ginny Thomas, and Sherry Zarrett. The vote to close was 7 in favor, 0 against. It was closed under number 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. The purpose of this closed meeting was a discussion and a vote on an updated ethics policy procedure and a review of the Symphony Woods Subcommittee report. The Columbia Association Board of Directors Architectural Resource Committee held a closed meeting on Monday, October 11th. Present were Deb Bach, Susan Sloan, Ed Gordon, Devorah Wilkinson. The vote to close was 4 in favor, 0 against, and the discussion of new and ongoing covenant cases closed under HOA Section 11B-111.4. Consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. The meeting started at 1:03 p.m., ended at 2:09 p.m. CA Board of Directors had a closed meeting on October 21st. In attendance were Lakey Boyd, Jess Duval, Lynn Egan, Janet Evans, Eric Greenberg, Tina Horn, Ginny Thomas, and Ashley Vaughn. Vote to close was 4 in favor, 0 against. Meeting was closed under Section 4, consultation with staff personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. And the purpose of this meeting was to discuss Symphony of Light settlement negotiations. The meeting ended at 9:42 p.m. Okay, so before we approve the agenda, I'd like to mention that the easement for Laurenwood Daycare Parking and Access will be moved on to the board vote section for a brief discussion. So with that in mind, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Ginny moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Lynn seconds. Any objections? Okay, agenda approved, unanimous. Okay, next up is resident speak out. We have a number of people here to speak tonight, so thank you for coming, everyone. I just want to remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak, and then if board members have pertinent follow-up questions, they are permitted to ask those. So we will start with Amy Bennett.
Thank you so much. Just FYI, I was not able to get in on Google Meets, so there may be others who are in my position who have to use a phone.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Amy Bennett, and I've lived in Columbia for the greater part of the last 55 years, the last 30 plus in Long Reach. Like all of you, I care deeply about Columbia and the values that are alive in our community. My primary goal in addressing you tonight is to let you know that there is growing concern in my community regarding the proposed Lake Elkhorn-Jackson Pond stream restoration project. As a homeowner who will be directly impacted by the proposed project, my husband and I have fundamental questions and concerns, and we are not alone. Over 50 people participated in each of the last 2 opportunities provided by the Long Reach Board and Columbia Association to learn more about the efforts and to raise questions and concerns. While community participation is essential, it is not sufficient if the community concerns are not listened to and addressed. Participation becomes meaningless. As you push for more community involvement, you must be ready to address citizen concerns in a meaningful way. I am asking all of you to continue to hold meetings and to not only ask how many people participated, but as board members to ask, what was the nature of the questions being asked? Were we able to address people's concerns? How can we communicate with the residents? Community participation requires give and take and dialogue, and not simply the sharing of information. Let me say, I believe Columbia Association has, for the most part, done a remarkable job in carrying forward the dream and hopes of Columbia. I do not feel that way about the stream restoration efforts, and am terrified, and as my neighbor says, traumatized about what is coming our way. What will success look like for this effort, and how will you measure it? Our meeting with Columbia Association Tuesday night, an extremely well-done video was presented about what to expect in our community if the project is approved. I encourage you to look at it with particular attention to the comments of the couple at the end of the video. I believe they were asked to give a realistic picture of what was to come and what the outcome looked like. They used words like shocking to describe how they felt when the machinery showed pictures of downed trees and total destruction of the environment. I think he said it looked like a war zone, and how their trees were taken down and a meadow put up. They said it was fine. Columbia's standards should never be fine. We should excel, and our residents should be proud and pleased by the work that is done. I don't want a meadow. My second concern relates to the budget. The impact of stream restoration efforts will require the allocation of funds to deal with maintenance,
Amy, could
completion
you
of
please wrap up
projects,
your comments?
and the unintended consequences that are sure to arise as stream restoration efforts continue, as evidenced by the overflow in Longfellow this week following stream restoration. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amy. Do we have any questions for Amy? Thank you, Amy. We appreciate your comments. Okay, next up, we have Claudia Pack. Do we have Claudia on the line? Okay, we will come back to Claudia. Oh. Is Claudia Pack on the line? Okay, we'll come back. Next up, Leah Saliter. Or some variation on that if I'm mispronouncing it.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think this is a result of the Google Meet and people trying to get in a different way.
How many ways are there?
Okay, we will try to come back. Do we have Alex on the line?
Yes, this is Alex Garza.
Oh, wait, sorry.
Yep.
There's two Alexes. Alex Hakimian.
Oh,
Sorry, Alex G. We'll get back to you.
Hi, this is Alex Akunian. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm Alex Akunian, former member of this board. I'd like to focus on scenario 3 in the fiscal year 2023 proposed budget information that staff provided to you, and also to highlight a major inconsistency in the numbers that are shown in the packet. I did email to you an advanced copy of my presentation, and I hope that it's helpful. If you could refer to page 2-6 of your packet, it shows the organization summary table and 3 scenarios. The leftmost column shows fiscal year 2022 estimates. In that column, under income, you'll notice that the last entry is membership allocations. The $9,800,000 is the total amount of money that CA is estimated to receive in 2022 from sales of memberships, much of which is from play and from fit and play memberships. Staff has assumed in your packet that free outdoor pools in scenario 3 would result in a 58% reduction in play memberships and a 33% reduction in fit and play memberships. Staff doesn't say how they came up with those percentages, but if they are right, it shows how powerful the ability to use outdoor pools is in people's decision to purchase those memberships. If pools are free, many people would discard those memberships apparently, because the ability to use the outdoor pools was the primary reason that they purchased the memberships in the first place. Assuming fewer memberships are sold, and under the rightmost column on that page for fiscal year 2023 scenario 3, it predicts membership income of $7,432,000. So that represents a 24% reduction in membership income from fiscal year 2022 and a 34% reduction from fiscal year 2023 scenario 1 and 2. Now, how did the assumptions of 58% reduction in play memberships and a 33% reduction in fit and play memberships actually calculate to 24% and 34% reductions in membership income? That's just not clear how that happened. But here's the huge...
Alex, you're at time.
Oh, he's still got 30 seconds.
Oh, sorry, 30 seconds. I apologize. 30 seconds.
I'm sorry. The huge inconsistency is that when you go to the outdoor pools table on page 3-17, you'll see that for fiscal year 2022, $1,787,000 of income from the sales of memberships is allocated to outdoor pools. That's only 18% of total membership income. And for fiscal year 2023 scenarios 1 and 2, it's again only 18%. That 18% is supposed to account for the value of outdoor pools in purchasing memberships.
Okay,
But it's
Alex, now
based
you're at
on-
time, so if you could please wrap up.
Okay, I'll just wrap it up. It makes no sense then to wrap up to have only 18% allocated to the income for outdoor pools. And I can go into much further detail in subsequent discussions, but you do have my email presentation, so
Yes.
I think that will be helpful to you.
Thank you, we did receive that.
Yeah, just a,
Can
oh, go ahead.
I get a clarification from staff on what membership allocation is defined as?
It's the memberships that have benefits for more than one facility.
Okay, so there's not a direct correlation between a reduction in memberships and the membership allocation that would be attributed to outdoor pools is where I'm going with that.
Right.
Okay.
Not directly.
Thank you. Ginny?
Yeah, but we don't have any memberships that don't allow for more than one facility, correct?
The one fits only apply to one facility.
Does that allow for outdoor pools as well?
No.
Just like Supreme Sports Club? Okay.
Right, and 7-day golf, yeah.
Pardon me?
There's a 7-day golf, there's a golf only.
A golf only, okay. And Alex, I couldn't hear the last part of your 18 and 22 and what your concern was there. You were
He
kind of fading.
he emailed us the
He did?
testimony, yeah.
Okay.
If I could explain to you, Ginny, 18% of total membership income
Could you speak up,
is
please?
what's out. Yes, 18% of total membership income is allocated to the income of outdoor pools. But from the assumptions in this packet, it appears that it should be a higher percentage, more in the line of 24 to 34% of the membership allocation ought to go to the outdoor pools. So it's because it makes no sense on the one hand to claim that there would be a 24 to 34% reduction in income if pools were free because of the power of outdoor pools in the decisions to buy memberships. And then on the other hand, allocate to outdoor pools only 18% of the income from the sales of memberships.
Thank you, Alex.
Again, okay?
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Alex?
I do have one question. So, Alex, you pointed out that there's a 34% reduction in membership allocations from scenario 1 to scenario 3 for FY23, and yet scenario 3 assumes a 58% reduction in the play memberships and a 33% reduction in the fit and play memberships. So I'm sort of trying to wrap my head around how that only results in a 34% reduction. It seems
I
like
have
it would
the
be
same
more
question. I do.
Based on those
It doesn't
percentages.
seem right, does it? It seems like it ought to be more. But I don't have.
Alex, I think the question is directed to staff.
Yeah.
We don't expect you to have the answer.
No,
is what I'm
I was
saying.
not expecting Alex to have the answer. That was a staff question.
Do we want to dig in at
I
this
don't
level
think we
before
do. So
the
I think,
presentation?
I think
mean,
we would like
are
to
presenting.
table this conversation so that we can all, thank you, Alex, for your comments, and we will make sure that we include the discussion of what these percentages and how they came to be what they are as part of our budget discussion.
Terrific, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we have David Weeks. Welcome, David.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear us? Oh, now you're muted. You just muted yourself. Oops.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Good. Okay. So, good evening, everyone. My name is David Weeks. Tonight, I'm coming before you as a representative of the Haiti Sister City Committee and as an appreciative citizen who has enjoyed the Cultural Fest, Columbia's 50th anniversary celebration in the mall, and other international events that Grace Chang and formerly Laura Smith have organized to celebrate the diversity of our community.
If you're on the phone, can you please mute your line?
No, I'm not on the phone.
No, not you, David. I'm sorry. I'm talking to, taken care of. Let's go. Sorry about that interruption.
So no, I was just saying that I'm very appreciative of the Culture Fest, the Columbia 50th anniversary celebration in the mall, other international events that Grace Chang and formerly Laura Smith have organized to celebrate the diversity of our community. I urge the Columbia Association Board to sustain its global commitment and leadership with its Sister City program and properly fund cultural community events in the next fiscal year. Well, when Jim Rouse founded Columbia, he wanted to diversify his planned community, and I think he would be pleased to see how far Columbia has come in its welcome to people of different races and ethnicities. I also think he would greatly approve of the international outreach the Columbia Association has done in recent years with its securing 5 sister city relationships with cities in France, Spain, Ghana, Haiti, and China. The Culture Fest, developed by CA to showcase different regions of the world to all the citizens of Howard County, have been exciting opportunities to appreciate the diversity of performing artists in our community and to honor the different cultures represented. To sustain the engagement of Sister City Committee members and to develop attractive events necessitates funding for publicity, entertainment, coordination, as well as refreshments and modest stipends for event performers. I recommend that CA work closely with the Sister City committees to develop Sister City signature events throughout the year. For example, the Haiti Sister City Committee and CA could collaborate in the development of a fun masked Mardi Gras evening to celebrate Haitian culture. Other Sister City engagement might include the Chinese Sister City Committee and CA organizing a Chinese New Year celebration. So in closing, I want to commend the Columbia Association's past leadership in promoting regional cultural events. And with the necessary funding, I hope CA will adequately sustain similar events in the future. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions for David? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next up we have Shuangzhou. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing.
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Hi, welcome.
Let me mute my. Okay, can
you hear us?
Me?
There we go.
So good evening, everyone. Yes, I am Shuangzhou, and thank you for this opportunity for me to speak out. I moved to Columbia in 2017 and have been serving as vice chairperson for the Columbia Liyang Sister City Committee, which is a subcommittee under IMAC. I've been living in the United States for more than 10 years, but I'm still considering myself as a new immigrant because I've never felt being a member of the community. However, I feel it here in Columbia. Through participating in committee meetings and activities, I'm being heard and I become relevant in the community. I also gain friendships, get to know many wonderful individuals who volunteer their time in promoting diversity and understanding, get to know local families who open their doors for Liyang High School students to stay with them for a week through the Students Exchange Program run by Columbia Liyang Sister City Committee. I remember hearing these families saying how they felt when Liyang High School kids made their dinners as one way to say thank you. I remember discussions on how to bring Columbia High School kids to experience local Liyang families, which were supposed to happen during summer 2020. There's no reason now to believe the pandemic will pass. I would love to see CA's continuing support to Columbia Liyang Sister City Committee and IMAC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Thank you, Sean. Okay, Alex Garza, you're up. You are muted.
There we go. There we go. How's everyone this evening? My name is Alex Garza. I grew up in Columbia. I currently live in Ellicott City. I want to bring your attention to what's going on at the Meriwether Lake House Hotel, which is a former Sheraton hotel located near the Whole Foods, and excuse me if I'm saying this wrong, Lake Kinnamakundi. And I started working there in 2018, and then in March, unlike half the country and the entire planet, hotel and restaurant workers were laid off. And about that same time, David Costello, the hotel's owner, took out about first of two federal PPP loans, which total over $2.5 million. On the loan applications, he claimed to have 110 workers and that he would use 100% of loans to pay off those workers. None of those workers have been paid. Wow. And now the rebranded Meriwether Lake House Hotel is about to reopen in November. For the last several months, David Costello has said that he will not bring back the hotel workers. Like to go into detail about me as a cook, but right now I've been doing retail work immediately after during the pandemic at Costco, and now in another retail position. I was recently got full-time work, and this work does not compare to what we had at the hotel. I don't have benefits, and my wages are significantly lower. There is hard to find a job to meet those wages and maybe exceed those wages. We have families that rely on us, and right now the hotels. David Costello is coming out of the pandemic with a renovated hotel and millions of dollars in government assistance, but refuses to simply allow us to return. David Costello does good business in Howard County. He gets a lot of government contracts for a construction company. He wants the community in Columbia to support him. I think he ought to do his share and to support the community. And my coworkers and I are members of the Unite Here Local 7. So again, Unite Here Local 7. And we have organized a boycott of the hotel. We ask you to support us by signing our pledge to not patronize the hotel until they respect our decades of service with let us to go back to work. We'd love to talk to anyone in the Columbia Association and each of the villages who is interested in learning more about the situation. For what I understand, David Costello is seeking an easement from the Columbia Association to build a path from the hotel to the bike path around the lake. I think the association should refrain from granting that specific easement for David Costello until he explains in detail what he's used the PPP loan for and why he won't hire the former workers. Me and my coworkers, most of the hotel workers are Latino, so just like David Weeks talks about celebrating diversity, that we want to have these Latino workers to return and any other workers as well. And my coworkers and our fellow union members will be reaching out individually to board members and our village level representatives to seek your support. Please let me know if I talk too fast or you have any other questions, since this is my first time doing this. Thank you for your time.
We do, so Dick Bolton has a question for you.
Yes, I sympathize with your situation. I hope that works out. Tell me, you mentioned Costello. I believe there's some other investors in that hotel, local investors. Are you aware who they might be?
No, but any specific details, I believe my union workers, Tracy Lingo and David, an assistant that works with Tracy, is able to, has that information. And if you want to reach out to them, you can reach out to them through unit. And you can also my union representatives asked me, who are these people that you're referring to?
Well, if you can give us any information about other investors, there may be some other pressure points where we could help you.
I would say to contact Unite Here Local 7 to Tracy Lingo.
Alex, we're going to move on with additional questions.
I was hoping you would do that for us.
Okay.
Jenny,
I feel like I'm missing something.
Alex, we have a couple more questions for you.
Yeah. Alex, I wasn't clear on whether the company has hired any other workers instead of this local union. with the 2.2 million or whatever it was? 5 million?
It has not.
Has anybody been hired to
it
work
has not.
at the hotel?
The grand reopening is November 5th, so I would assume so.
It's November 5th? Okay.
Yes.
So, okay.
That is confirmed.
But the workers you're talking about never got any of the 2.5?
He doesn't have details about the hotel.
All right, thank you. He knows about the
No, they have not received any of the pay from the PPP loan at all. There's been some hotel workers housekeeping workers that have reached out, and they said they won't be hiring any of the former workers.
Thank you.
Tina?
Thank you. Is there a website where we can do additional research?
Yes. Let me.
Thank you.
Alex, if you would be willing to go to the CA website and email that to the board, we would very much appreciate that.
Okay.
The only other thing I would want to know is if you have a sense of how many people were let go.
110 workers.
Thank you.
Any additional questions for Alex? Thank you, Alex.
Thank you for your time. Sorry for the miscommunication in the beginning.
Oh, it's all good.
I will reach out to people with to that CA site.
Okay, next up, we have Jill Christensen.
Good evening.
Hello.
It's nice to see familiar faces tonight. I'm Jill Christensen. I'm speaking on behalf of Luminous, the network of New Americans here in Columbia. Some of you might know Luminous by its previous name, Fern, and our service to immigrants in Howard County for 40 years. I've lived here for 2 decades, and I've worked in race equity for the state, as well as international relations, addressing education and human rights in dozens of countries. I believe in CA. I'm like a huge fan.
Jill, can you talk into your mic a little bit? It's a little bit hard to hear you here in the boardroom.
I will speak louder if that's helpful.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. I believe in CA, and it is such a valuable resource for community engagement that builds cultural cohesion and well-being. Tonight, in the near future, you're going to be looking at what CA has done, where CA has been, and importantly, I ask you to deeply consider what you want CA to be in the future. Your actions on the budget are hard decisions, and very much want to talk about them in relation then to immigrants in Howard County. With Luminous and our network of New Americans, we're focused on connections across Columbia and Howard County so that immigrants can thrive here. The work includes legal assistance, navigation of social services, sometimes even signing up for CA pools, gyms, and after-school care, as well as helping immigrants with our eviction prevention and then other health equity work. We know from the census that the immigrant numbers in Howard County are increasing and have increased. We know too that factors of skin color, caste, immigration status absolutely impact well-being. Through these years, Howard County has served and done very well with public services. CA has been a very important process in helping the well-being within Columbia and Howard County. Certainly, I know this is a time that diversity, equity, and inclusion are very important within the Columbia Association. And the work of the International Exchange and Multicultural Programs of CA is at the core of this. With Luminous, we support and urge you to consider the full funding of international education and multicultural programs. That includes then making the sole interim staff member who works 30 hours a week a permanent full-time employee. Keep in mind that this previously was a full-time employee who was professional and then a part-time support person. You know, with paid staff, there's accountability to ensure that programs and initiatives are accurately reflected as far as being a part of a community and not just window dressing. The ethos of CA has always been that we're a diverse and inclusive community. This takes intentional work. To stray away from it would in fact lead to the unraveling of our community. We've seen the nation devolve in many ways, at times under the flag of nationalism and not being inclusive. We want to be an inclusive community, including immigrants and those with international ties. As you've heard from David Weeks, the Sister Cities Initiative with the 5 sister cities in Ghana, Haiti, China, Spain, and France are very important. But also then, the World Languages Cafe that IEMP also includes, putting together and merging people who are native speakers with then those who are wanting to learn languages. It includes languages like Arabic and Turkish, which we don't always hear every day. Research shows the power of exchanges and relationships in dismantling stereotypes and building empathy for others. The work of CA's international exchange and multicultural programs is essential.
Yeah, I know.
So, with Luminous, we're appreciative of the CA staff.
Jill, I just want to give you a heads up. You have 30 seconds left.
It's perfect. And begun decisions and discussions as to what unity is. And an initiative called Race for the World that we're in discussions with on CA that will bring together immigrants and those that have been in the country for generations. We want CA to be robust, serving the committee and the community. And I highly suggest the full support for the international exchange and multicultural programs. Thank you very, very much. It's good to be with you this evening.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions for Jill?
Thank you, Jill. Okay, next up we have Danae Barr. Is Danae Barr on the line? Okay. Do we have Jeanette Jackman? By any chance, has Claudia Pack joined us? Or has Leah Soliter joined us? Okay, I would like to apologize to those who could not get into the call tonight. I'm not sure. We'll have to investigate what's going on with that. So last call for any of the following: Claudia Pack, Leah Soliter, Danae Barr, or Jeanette Jackman. Thank you. If any of you are watching us on live stream, I highly encourage you to email us your testimony, and we will most certainly read and consider it. Thank you. That ends our resident speak out. Okay, on tonight's consent agenda is the approval of minutes from the September 23rd, 2021 BOD meeting. So those are approved. Moving on to our updated board vote, we have a discussion of the Laurenwood Daycare parking and access easement request.
Okay.
Jenny?
Thank you. I'd like to thank Dennis for working with us on making a change in the resolution, and you should have a copy on your desk of the change. I think it was also emailed to you. Basically, while Dennis is giving this to you, this change will guarantee that CA open space is protected for our residents despite any changes in ownership of the property or any potential changes in the general plan, the regulatory process, or land use. No, it's okay, thanks. In the future, zoning changes, et cetera. And it also means that it'll be this board that really decides how an easement will be used. So if you look at this paper, the only change is the fourth paragraph, the bottom. It says the easement shall terminate if and when the current use of the grantee's property ceases to be for a Maryland licensed daycare service. It's just to emphasize that that's all it's going to be. So I'd like to move that.
I'll second.
Ginny moves and Andy seconds that we approve the updated easement. Are there any objections?
No, I just wanted to ask some questions.
Discussion, yes, Tina?
Dennis, I wanted to get your sense, please, if you think that this is a necessary and/or material change?
So this was actually brought up by the petitioner's attorney and specifically addressed in the presentation. So yeah, they're aware of it. I think it's important.
Okay,
And
thank
so
you.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, and we discussed it a little bit when I raised it at that meeting, too. So I think you were really implementing what had been requested. Okay.
Thank you. Any
Good
other
question.
questions? Do you want me to take a roll call vote, or are there any objections?
Nope.
Okay, so motion passes 10-0. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to board discussion. The first topic is the appointment of new board members to board committees. Okay, so we have some vacancies that we need to fill. First is the audit committee. Eric has generously volunteered to participate in the audit committee unless someone else is wanting to arm wrestle him for it.
May the force be with you.
So thank you, Eric, for stepping up on that one. So the next up is the Risk Management Committee. Ashley, I know we had a brief email exchange earlier today. Are you willing to participate on the Risk Management Committee?
I'm going to have to stick with just one committee. So if the risk committee is more needed, I could definitely do that one in exchange for the senior one, but it'll have to be just one. Is there a
I'd be
preference?
willing to take on the seniors.
You'll take the seniors?
If she, yeah.
So Ashley, is that all right with you? You take Risk Management and Ginny will take seniors. Okay. Thank you. And Eric has agreed to take on the Aquatics Advisory Committee. Okay, so the other two meetings that we have to staff are the board operations committees. So we have one on November 29th and one on February 28th. I would like to recommend that neither Eric nor Ashley do the November 29th. So the board, just for your information, the Board Operations Committee is where we set the agendas for the next quarter, but it can be a lot of information if you're new. So while I would highly encourage you to attend if you are able, I think it's very valuable information. I also think it might be better to wait until the February 28th if one of you would like to participate in that. So with that in mind, do I have another board member who is willing to volunteer for the November 29th BOC meeting?
It's Hanukkah and we're not Jewish, so I'm happy to do that.
Thank you, Tina. All right, so Tina will take the November 29th, and then
Janet, send, not this Janet, the other Janet, send an invite
Yes.
and all that, put it on the
Yes,
calendar.
yes.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so then February 28th, this would be open to anyone. So Eric and Ashley, if you are interested in participating, otherwise we can also get other volunteers. Do I have anyone who is interested in the February 28th meeting? Dick?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so November 29th will be Tina, February 28th will be Dick. Okay, so that takes care of the vacancies. Thank you very much, everyone, for your participation. Okay, next on board discussion is our first discussion of the fiscal year 2023 budget scenarios.
Okay. So we are going to walk through a slide deck first and kind of orient you to the process and how we're doing it a bit differently, and talk about some big picture pieces of the puzzle. And then we'll do some more detailed information around the key departments and kind of summary information. And then we have a solid balance of time for whatever kind of detailed questions. Anything in this binder for scenario test cases is ready to be discussed. So that's kind of how we're going to walk through the information. So I'm going to get started, and then Susan Krabbe will do the remainder of the presentation after I kind of do the framework. So first off, just to reorient everyone, both here on the board, but also anybody watching online, that we are now at October 28th, and we're presenting the scenarios at a board meeting. So that is how we're using our time tonight. Between now and next Thursday, so going live tonight, and I'll touch on this again at the end, we will have some online survey interaction, both around categories for prioritization and a couple of exercises around ranking and kind of a must, should, nice to do. So a few different ways to try and get input on what are the community priorities. So that is one way to interact if you do not have the time to attend a meeting. But again, this will be recorded. We'll offer the online feedback. And then on November 4th, which is next Thursday, we are doing a special community information session. So this is not a board meeting. We will be presenting this information, but in a different way than we are doing it tonight in front of the board. And certainly anything that comes up tonight might help shape how we choose to move through that discussion. And then the remainder, you'll notice, is largely in board meetings, but we will have another opportunity for online feedback in January. I think the big moves to understand is that by early December is when we'll really get to, here's where we're headed with a draft. We'll have that be made public in January, have online feedback, more listening, and then it will be finalized and in front of the board for approval by the end of February. So again, just kind of where we are in the process. So why are we making these changes? In quick summary, I think that one of the big pieces that I've heard a lot of feedback on and the board thought was important was how can we engage the community more directly, but also earlier in the process, instead of having people come forward when the draft was finalized and being voted on, helping shape the actual information. We also wanted to make sure that the board had kind of more flexibility understanding what the key variables are and where the levers are in the process and where you might want to make some moves. So the way we're going about doing that is that we did not start with the fixed parameters at the beginning. And so what that means is we did not start with the budget must be X amount of dollars or the annual charge is set at X amount. And the reason around that is really that setting that at the outset without really knowing what the priorities are or what the trade-offs might be, it really is kind of an abstract decision. So we wanted to make sure those variables stayed on the table so they could be better informed by community input. The scenario test cases that we're going to go through were determined by the CA board in July, and we have been working feverishly to flesh those out, and that is what all of this documentation, I keep pointing to a binder for those watching. All of this information is part of the agenda packet for tonight's meeting. And it is extensive, but it is there if you want to review it in detail. And then lastly, we're also changing, as I mentioned just a moment ago, online stakeholder input, really trying to make sure that we're getting input in a variety of ways. You don't have to attend a meeting at a set day at a certain time in order to have some input. And then we're going to have the special dedicated community session, and then obviously the ongoing board meetings. So one of the key things, because I know pre-budget scenario test cases just rolls right off the tongue, but it is something that we really chose the language carefully. The test cases and kind of what we have worked through based on the guidance we were given by the board in July is a collection of information that is meant to give you better and deeper visibility into operations. So we had to pull apart the way that some of our budget line items worked. We reorganized some. We certainly made an effort to do that in a way that should, we hope, facilitate some community understanding. Some of the line items had been legacy line items, as I call them, where we had been tracking it one way, and we're now thinking about different ways to do that. Clearly, everything that is in here is built on assumptions to produce the estimates today. That is a reality of any budget process. So we included a series of notes, up front in the summary section, but in each section around each department, there is at least one page, if not two, that details what assumptions are being made. So obviously those assumptions are also up for discussion. I also want to be clear about what the test cases are not at this point. They are not a staff recommendation. There is not a scenario that is in this packet today that the staff is putting forward as, here is the staff's recommendation for a budget. In fact, we're really not at a true draft budget at this point. We were asked to test out and understand what some different impacts were going to be across the budget, and that's what this collection of information is. So it's meant to give a lot more fodder for discussion so that we can make sure that we're asking the right questions to then move towards getting a draft budget put together over the course of December and January. So there is a lot of complexity to the assumptions being made because Columbia Association is fundamentally a very complex organization and very multifaceted. So I want to be very forthright that in trying to pull things apart, there is a lot of interconnectedness in these assumptions. And so, of course, at the discussion stage that we're at, we can try other things. We can tilt this a little bit or increase this and decrease that. That's obviously where the board guidance really is concentrated. But I want to be clear that some of that ripple impact, until we kind of start to dig into it, we won't quite know how all that interconnectedness plays out. So I put together a very high-level list based on, conversations not just with the budget team, but with the variety of managers across the organization that participated in this collaborative budget process. And our assumptions, particularly around what really fits in that fixed cost category and what that really means, I want to be very clear what I define as an acceptable minimum service level and what you might define it as and what a citizen might define it as could be very different. And so we need to be very clear that this idea of what makes Columbia, Columbia, what must CA deliver, involves interpretation. Fundamentally, it does. So we're putting that on the table, that's going to continue to be a moving target. So here's a few things that have come up in conversation. I've gotten questions in the community. This board itself has brought up ideas about this. So for instance, if we were to do facility closures, we know that that's a multi-year wind down process. We know that there would actually be a cost outlay when you close something, which can be counterintuitive for a lot of people. We're going through that process in the Haven closure right now. There will be participation impacts. So there will be a ripple impact, whether it's in membership, whether it's in classes, whether it's in revenue. But we don't know that, if we shut down, one class at one time, that means another class gets fuller, or do people just no longer do that activity? Real estate changes. This is one that I've heard quite a bit since I've been here, but this idea of what if we sold a property, or what if we reused? And I want to be very clear. I know many memos have been generated on this topic. Most of the property that CA owns is part of credited open space, which means that it is not market competitive on the open market. No one could buy it and use it for anything other than passive open space. So there's not a big, deep, giant market for that, but certainly that doesn't mean it's not possible. There's really only 2 parcels that we own that are in commercial zoning, but then you really have to take the next step. You've got to have a user that's either interested in the facility or the site. So I just want to bring that up, that again, sometimes the assumptions might seem a little more straightforward than they actually are. I think that the other piece is, we have to remember that as a community service organization, the idea of stewardship and something like a closure or land changing hands could also inadvertently result in disinvestment, and we would actually become a contributory factor to that, because again, what is minimum service? If we close it, do we have an ability to maintain it? What level of maintaining, if it's not activated, would still make it a community asset, right? So again, all those things are embedded here. Of course, there's the question, what is the level of administration really needed to ensure smooth operation? So again, trying to get to that minimum level of service for administrative cost, that is something that people could have different interpretations on. And then lastly, I think the other piece that has a ripple impact that might not be obvious at face value is that if we made significant changes, there is a thread that happens across, what our insurance is, what our lenders want us to collateralize with, how we can put our employee benefit packages together based on the size of the organization. So again, all those pieces, and this is just kind of a quick assortment, are the kinds of things that are interconnected across the assumptions. So what I would like to do is kind of move through the big pieces of the scenario and assumptions, and then, as I said, Susan will dig into more detail. I am hoping that for the non-financial experts, because Susan, of course, is a financial expert, that this is pretty straightforward and easy to understand. That is the intent, anyway. So, scenario test case 1, the way in the board meeting we discussed this was essentially keep CA's existing program services facilities, essentially CA, business as usual. So here's the key moves we did. We did that, but that does not mean identical to this current fiscal year, to be clear. So we are still moving forward, but we are still assuming limited resources in this scenario. We are getting our open space, parks, pathways, play areas back to a robust operation and maintenance schedule. All 23 outdoor pools would be open. We are at or in progress of returning to pre-pandemic levels for programs and services, just based on attendance and social distancing and kind of those variables that we don't know what that's going to look like in spring. We absolutely are putting a renewed focus through a variety of ways in employee retention, recruiting, and training. So that's both making moves in HR, it's providing more resources towards training, those kind of pieces. Increased engagement with a position created in that'll actually operate out of my office, and then more events that is going to be running out of community operations. Continued improvement in communications and digital marketing, and continued improvement in cybersecurity. In test case 2, this is the one that started to have some movement from kind of how we have operated. So the first question posed in scenario 2 is if we had all of the paying programs, and so again, the way we define that was if you have a membership charge or a class that has a charge, but if you pay specifically for that program to participate, with the exception of outdoor pools, if all the paying programs cover their operating cost, not counting fixed and administrative costs, and then be clear about how much annual charge subsidy is required to cover the operation of outdoor pools. So largely, the assumptions in test case 1 stay true. The two big things to highlight, and Susan will go into this in a lot more detail, but I think at a high level, the big takeaways are that most of our paid programs are self-sustaining under a true not-for-profit structure, which is that they essentially do pay for themselves in terms of the changeable expenses, the operating costs. And what a nonprofit structure does is say, we're going to underwrite the overhead expenses, we're going to subsidize for additional access, right? We're going to actually make sure that our rate structure, we're allocating overhead funds towards making sure they're more accessible across the community. The programs that are not self-sustaining under that model, under the not-for-profit model, so excluding fixed and administrative, they are, as you might expect or might not, really ones that a lot of people feel strongly add value to the community. So arts, culture, youth and teen, the swim center, and outdoor pools. So I think this is one where as you do start to pull it apart, you get a better understanding and visibility. And then lastly, in scenario test case 3, this is where we said, and kind of the board charged, okay, everything has to pay for itself, be self-sustaining, and you've got to carry all the overhead, the fixed costs, administrative allocations. All outdoor pools are made free, and again, clearly report what that annual charge subsidy looks like. So there are some impacts here that I think are important to highlight. First off, if we were to have, Columbia has approximately 105,000 people as of the census that just came out, we would be functioning at maximum capacity of the pools. And so we even did the math based on what the fire marshal will allow in every pool. And that gets us to 11,500, as a round number for maximum capacity. On average, on an attendance, we're at about 2,500 to 3,000, and we looked at both 2019 and this past summer. So we're talking about 3 to 4 times potentially the capacity of the pools as we operate them today. So that would increase staffing, not just in terms of, straightforward lifeguards, but also quite a bit of additional staff, and we're using a general term of security, but what that really means is managing access. It wouldn't be the lifeguards being able to stay right by the gate and, make sure you got your card to come in, or you have your proof of residency if, however we determine to do that. But also, crowd control and the ability to say, no, we're at maximum capacity, you can't enter today, right? So that has some staffing ramifications. As was referenced earlier, we are projecting an impact on memberships, particularly non-resident. A piece of that is people in the free market are going to or could make changes based on not wanting to go to more crowded pools, right? That is a potential. And then even though we're only running this in these test cases in a single budget year, we absolutely have to make it clear that we would foresee a multi-year impact across different programming and then a multi-year impact across different facilities and operations. And what I mean by that is the cost to run the outdoor pools in total and we'll talk about this again, both impacts annual charge, but impacts membership. And if our revenue streams go down, but our costs are increasing, then we have to make sure that we're making cuts in other places, right? So that would have to start to be a multi-year process to determine exactly what that would be. And so one of the other key moves is that what we put forward to make the math work, so to speak, would be that one of the movable pieces would be an increase in the annual charge. And I'll touch on that in a moment with the specific numbers up. I do want to take a moment to hit on minimum wage. I know we already talked about this, at the last board meeting. Everyone is aware Howard County is considering a increase in minimum wage above the state of Maryland that would go into effect January 1st, 2022. So it would actually impact us this current fiscal year, as well as, obviously we need to incorporate it into this budget process. So we are in the staff of refining that analysis. So to be clear, this is much more than, doing some multiplication. We've got to really look at addressing wage compression, how we would start to make different gradations, as well as understanding the total package around wage-related taxes and benefits. So, this was pre-filed with the county October 7th. We were not able to incorporate it for the information in these test cases, but we do expect to have that initial analysis by our next meeting, November 11th, and then we will start to fold that into the budget process. Obviously, it will be fully in there by the time we're reaching into December and moving into a single draft budget. So a little more details I just referenced on the key assumptions around annual charge rate and the cap. You'll notice in scenario 3, we made the move to 74 cents. We have been at 68. Historically, we have been higher than 68. We put forward the charge rate change because it is a more certain number. Obviously, the other lever is the annual charge cap, but that's based on valuation. So obviously, that could fluctuate more. So, in this scenario, we went forward with an annual charge rate change. Again, this would put it the maximum in, our bounding documentation goes to 75. So 74 gets us right next to the maximum and no wiggle room for the future. And that is something that certainly gives staff a lot of heartburn in this test case. Also wanted to touch on realignment. So I use the very financially appropriate term of buckets a lot. I know Susan and Lynn really like that. But it's something people can understand, right? So we have some new buckets in terms of our funding categories and line items, but we also made some shifts in long existing, line items and budget buckets. And that is a combination of some, streamlining and updating we've done in the organizational structure, but also an attempt to pull apart the categories so that the community can better understand what these line items mean to them, right? So you'll see the breakdown on community operations, open space facilities and building grounds, parks, pathways, and play areas. I think that's something you can get your arms around, right? You know what that means. And again, you can read, you'll see these categories multiple times over this evening. And then community programs and services, we've got the wellness and fitness, sports. I do want to be clear, and when Susan presents, she'll articulate this, but outdoor pools, we did actually pull out as a separate category. So indoor pools are actually in sports, and then arts and culture, youth and teens. So this is in your binder. So I'm now in tab 1, page 5 and 6. I'm not going to read these aloud to you, but what this really does, I'm going to do a few highlights, is it takes what I just went over as key moves, and it starts to be a summary table of the very specific assumptions that we made. As I said earlier, behind each tab or, online in a packet, at each department section, there is a page of key assumptions. So it's very clear, here's what here's how we got the math to the point that you're seeing it today. For community programs and services, I'd say this is really the group, because this is largely where our membership-based or our fee-based programs and services are. This is where a lot of assumptions are being made, but again, our intent is to open all 23 outdoor pools. We do see movement in membership rates. We're on our way back to being fully robustly staffed and programming around arts and youth and teens. In scenario 2, as I mentioned, there's really a key assumption here that as we started to try and get some of the math to work, there were some things that were not self-sustaining, and to try and make a charge rate that would make them self-sustaining, it got so outsized as to be impractical, right? Somebody's not going to pay $1,000 for a class, right? So again, Susan will dig into that a bit more. And then scenario 3, as I mentioned, really driven by the movement towards outdoor pools and what kind of ripple impact that may or may not have. Community operations, definitely fully back to pre-COVID, not just staffing, but the ability to operate and maintain, and then full return of events as well. And then internal services is really the few that are listed here. They're not as significantly impacted by scenario 2 and 3, except as overhead, right, and kind of declining based on that size. But again, continued improvement in communications and marketing, administrative services. We are doing well at IT and purchasing, and have another increase for HR and a slight adjustment in accounting, and then really that cybersecurity continuing with that emphasis, as well as a lot of project process that we've set up. And then, as I mentioned, in the Office of the President, I'm going to make an addition of a community engagement position, and then we're moving what had been called that planning function into community operations, though again, a very closely coordinated function that obviously also interacts with general counsel and a lot of other departments across the organization. And then as a reminder, general counsel and audit both kind of appear in the Office of President. So, that's not just literally me and Janet Loughran, though that we are a mean, lean team, I will say. And then lastly, this is a quick summary snapshot of our projected outcomes. So across the organization as a whole, we were able to say pretty close to that magic $3 million mark. 3.4, I think, is what our lenders really like to see, from what I understand from Susan. This is the mark that I think historically we've been able to maintain, and is required in some of our debt coverage and that kind of thing. So we were able to achieve it. Went down a bit in scenario 3. Again, we're putting forward raising the annual charge to accommodate the cost of making free access. And then we really don't know kind of what that ripple impact would be across different programs and facilities. So then community programs and services. In scenario 1, we're there in terms of covering changeable expenses, so I think that was really good news. Scenario 2, this is where there are some, as I was just referencing, somebody's not going to pay $200 or $1,000 for a class. So you're going to see that we're saying it would either be you've got to cut the program completely, or we've got to make a completely different change if, as a nonprofit, our goal becomes that you've got to be self-sustaining or you've got to make a profit. And then we call out what the outdoor pool, what share of the annual charge we use in scenario 2 for outdoor pools, and then what share we use in scenario 3. And then again, the ripple impact of what the user price increases would be. Community operations, right over $19 million in all three scenarios. Again, that's largely what people understand is our land, our assets, our facilities maintenance, repair and maintenance. And then we did pull the proposed capital budget back to 10 million. We had gone down to 8 this year, though the focus, as you see in the list of projects, is still largely repair and maintenance, at that level. So in closing out my section, kind of a snapshot before we really dig into more numbers or the detailed numbers. Where we are is really a lot of detailed information to get better visibility. So again, we don't have an exact budget that we're putting forward. But as much as that's where we are at this stage, I just want to make sure everyone keeps in mind, we're not just in a numbers exercise of a business model performance, right? We are a community service organization. So the budget's a demonstration of priorities and values, and we just want to make sure that we stay focused on what are the right questions ultimately that we want to be answering. And some of the comments in Resident Speak Out, I think, touched on this. So a few food for thought, kind of as we shift gears. What do we do that is valuable and valued by the community? What do we do that makes Columbia, Columbia? And how are we better positioning for the future? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan to go through lots of detail. And I do believe she's going to be making a lot of references directly to your binder book. So pop that baby open, get your tabs ready. And with that, Susan, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks. So thanks for your attention. I typically will talk pretty fast and we'll move through this quickly. So please stop and ask questions as we go along. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to are the graphs, the stacked charts that we prepared in section 2. So 2-1 of your packet. So these are just a little different visual presentation of what you've been used to seeing generally as the sources and uses charts and graphs that we've had in the annual report lately and also in the budget. So this is presenting you with where does the resources come from and how are they used. So the first chart, because scenarios 1 and 2 are essentially the same, it's just one picture. So it's presenting that of the total income of just under $75 million, most of that is the annual charge, and that's not a surprise. So on then community programs and services, 22.9 million in these scenarios is what's projected, with the pools that we show separately of 2.7. On the spending side, the biggest single piece is those community programs and services that are generating that revenue and that are also important to the community and don't generate revenue. So this is kind of basically a cash presentation. So this is essentially roughly dollars in and dollars out. So it doesn't include depreciation, for example, or other losses on disposals.
Quick question. Yeah. Susan, pools, that's all the pools.
23.
Yeah. Would you give some consideration to break it down into outdoor and indoor?
That's just outdoor pools. Sorry.
The 2.7 is outdoor?
Yes.
In the income?
Yes.
Okay, and the 4.8
is outdoor.
Is only outdoor. Maybe we could make that clear.
Okay.
Not all the pools, just those. Okay, thanks.
Next slide shows the same presentation basis and style, and it's presenting the results of the scenario 3 test case. So annual charge then becomes a significant portion of it grows to be a greater proportion of the funds coming in, and the community programs and services is reduced, but is still a major contributor. So this, the spending side is not dramatically different because really what's changed is the income. There's additional costs in the pools, as was noted, but not very much. So.
Susan, can I just ask you what the pool income comes from? If it's like if no one's paying to enter, is it like swimming lessons, that kind of stuff?
So in scenario 3, there really isn't any, or
it says 1.7 million. Am I reading that wrong in the income?
At the bottom.
Way at the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, so it would be the fees, the fee-based.
So like swim teams, swim lessons,
Right,
that kind
and
of
a
stuff?
little bit of non-resident membership.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
We actually generate more revenue off of the non-member play memberships, even though there's less of them than we do off of the resident play memberships.
Just a question, since we're on this. You have other net 1.2 million for spending.
That's just the projected balance sheet changes, so, because this is a cash basis and just to show the.
Okay, because I noticed wasn't on the others, and that was why.
Right,
Okay.
it is material on this one.
Another pool question?
Question. Is the total spending and total income the same between scenario 1, 2, and scenario 3? Or is there
Yes.
just about?
Susan, a
You
quick.
can see that more clearly on the spreadsheet.
Yeah, a follow-up on what Dan just said, that we get more revenue, I believe you said, on the pools, outdoor pools from non-residents than residents. If the pools are all free, the outdoor pools,
For residents.
they're only going to be for residents, so you'll have another category that would be non-residents charging whatever.
Right.
There'll be, I don't want to get too, but there will be a lot of considerations because, like you said, the pools will be very, very busy for the residents, so there will have to be a consideration of not allowing non-residents to use the pools. There'll be a lot of cascading decisions to that because of the capacity issues.
Okay, follow up quick on this. So the teams, a lot of the teams, the swim teams, the summer swim teams, consist of a lot of non-residents. What are the ramifications? You don't have to answer now. What would the ramifications be?
These will all be waterfall decisions that'll have to be made.
Right.
Guests, non-residents having access, whether people should be confined to pools around their village so that, there's a lot of considerations once you start pushing everything to max capacity.
Yeah, thank you.
That non-residents.
Okay. That was my point. It's more complex than, okay, thank you.
And we did not estimate all of those ramifications. It just was not possible in this time. So the other thing that we did that is different as far as the format, and this was what you as the board charged us with, is to look at how programs and services did in covering their what we just call their changeable expenses. So those are expenses as we define them for these test cases for this exercise. Those are the expenses that are incurred to provide the programs or services. They're necessary to provide the programs or services, but they will vary, like depending on the scale or the duration of the program. So those move with participation and with the various activities.
So like cost of goods sold, but cost of services provided. Can I think of it like that?
Yes, I think.
Ish?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for example, if we're going to have art classes, then the amount of supplies that you need for a ceramics class will vary based on the participation in these.
Okay.
So those are not required by commitment. So if it was a lease or a contract or things, essential services that we would say we provided as far as maintaining open space, those things are included in the fixed cost. So in the fixed costs, just obviously there would be expenses incurred to bill and collect that annual charge. It doesn't happen by itself, and there would be staff and IT software licenses and things like that. This assumes that we would maintain CA's natural space, open space, parks, pathways, tot lots and conduct our sustainability activities at basically FY22 levels. But we actually ended up including all of that in the fixed costs here, just for ease of analysis. There are things that would have to still happen. We'd still need organizational leadership. We would still be required to get audits. There would be, we'd have to do payroll. We'd have to pay vendors. So there would be those administrative processes. We'd still need legal advice. And there would be communications related to these activities still. People would still need to know what was going on in the open space or with CA, even if that's all we did. There would be a requirement to at least maintain to some minimum level the buildings that we had. And we saw that in the early days of the pandemic when we were the mandated shutdowns. We still had to heat and condition and inspect and just provide just basic maintenance for those fixed assets, at least in the short run, until there was some plan for disposal. So this being a one-year exercise, those minimal costs are included in those. We assumed that it was a fixed expense to maintain the village buildings, not at a minimal level, but basically at their operational. And that we would support, that CA would support the village community associations with the annual charge share and the other operating expenses, including legal fees, insurance, taxes, et cetera. But then CA-wide, we would be required to pay for things like rent, where we have a lease, such as here. Insurance would still be required. There would be minimal scaling of that under a one-year scenario. Taxes, interest on our debt, that is fixed, depreciation expenses. So those are what we categorized as fixed for this one. Right. So we have, and I can pass it around. There's a couple spreadsheets here, just so that you have this in front of you, the fixed. So on this slide, we're showing you what organization-wide, what fixed and administrative kind of cost analysis looks like. So first of all, CA's income would be reduced because the fixed expenses do not generate the program revenue. That's the changeable investment that generates that. So we've included here the annual charge, rental and lease income. That's we're projecting the sublease income for here at headquarters, and other income being investment income and fees for some fees for open space, media mailing reimbursements. And then on the fixed side, for these categories are CA-wide, so these are the personnel expenses that are reflected in the activities that I mentioned before, like the administrative processes, the open space, and the communications and marketing, et cetera. So this is the dollar representation of the analysis that we provided.
So the bottom line says
that's it.
we got $65,000 to play with.
Yeah, right.
Right, from,
Don't spend it all in one.
I know, right. After you throw away, I mean, debt, fixed costs, we're down to 65,000.
The village, right. And now, these assumptions, yeah, thanks. Any two people may not agree on these, right? So this is our best effort at a reasonable approach to what would be required to do these things. So you can decide that fully, maintaining the open space to the current levels is not a fixed expense, but that this is what I felt like we heard this time, last year when we did this exercise, and that's it. That's it. Yep.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So the assumption that I think that I'm seeing is that when we make the pools free in these scenarios, usage goes, someone stepped on the gas and usage went to the floor and all pools are at all maximums at all the times? Is that the scenario assumption?
Not all the time.
Okay.
The significantly increased staffing and security are on the weekends and major holidays. During the week, the usage does tend to drop a little bit. So we don't assume it all the time.
Okay.
But at obviously the most popular times, like I said, Friday, Saturdays, and Sundays are the biggest concern.
Jess and then Lynn.
First of all, I just wanted to say how much I love this presentation. And as a non-financial person, it makes it very easy for me to understand. So I really appreciate all the work that went into this, because compared to like last year going through the budget, like I get it. And it does a great job of illustrating the trade-offs and how things are interconnected and how one change here impacts something else. So I just really wanted to say how grateful I am for that. And then my question was about assumptions is about gyms and memberships. So now I had it open to the page and now I gotta find it. Hang on. Under Department of Community Programs and Service, 3.1, it says the assumption is a 3 to 5 increase in membership, 3 to 5% increase in FY23, and then additional growth. Basically, the memberships are going to come back to where they were pre-pandemic. Is that kind of that's sort of the vibe I got?
Not quite. It'll be about 90% is what we're projecting for the end of FY23.
Okay.
For all of the old sport and fitness, the projections for the end of FY23 are about somewhere between the 85 and 95% range, depending on the program or service. You know, tennis and golf have a head start, but golf is starting to cool off a little bit. So they're actually going to come back to earth just a bit. Tennis will keep going up because they're still under. But we anticipate the other programs, which quite haven't come back yet, to get to that anywhere between 85 and 90%.
And just sort of as a follow-up, I mean, does that take into effect sort of the impact of the fact that people were home and totally changed the way they worked out during the pandemic? I mean, do you think that there may be a bigger gap that you might not get to that point because everybody bought a Peloton and made a home gym and and joined the online yoga classes, and so how do you think that's going to impact?
What we're actually starting to find, despite all the articles that were written like literally every day about how fitness clubs were dead because everybody's going to work out at home.
Yeah.
How many people want to keep doing Zoom meetings?
Yeah.
Nobody, because you're sick of them. Well, what we're finding is that most people, when they're comfortable, we have to, not that we want to. But most people are combining the two.
Okay.
Just like, as we go forward, we probably won't have conference calls anymore. It'll be video meetings. But if we can meet in person, we'll meet in person. That's why we're all here. And what we're finding is that that's what people are doing with fitness centers when they're comfortable coming back. And that varies literally by county. It's not even state by state. We all went into the pandemic together, but as we come out, at first it was state by state, and as it keeps going on, it's literally county by county how the populations are reacting differently. But like they may do one workout a week at home on the Peloton, but they're going back because they miss being with people. And that's really what we're starting to find and see the behavior patterns are.
Gotcha.
And that is universal across the country and across the world.
Okay, great, wonderful. That's just what I wanted to know more about.
Lynn, Dick, Eric, then Sherry.
I'm still on pools. I'm a pool person. And the figures that we got from the outdoor pools this year didn't show pools being at capacity. Some pools, yes, but for instance, Faulkner Ridge and Running Brook, the two I go to, very low usage. Are you expecting that we will be able to increase the usage of the pools, or, how does that work out? Some pools are at capacity always, but there are a large number of them that are never at capacity.
In which scenario? Are we talking?
Any scenario. 1 and 2, let's put it that way. 3 would change things. Probably change things.
It's market driven. We've offered, excuse me, in the past we've offered discounted rates during the week at some of the lower use pools, and nobody took advantage of it. Right. So some of it is, and we know that people travel from some neighborhoods to go to other neighborhoods. And that's, as we move through the pools, we're trying to add new features and do different things as we move through the renovations to try to make them more attractive. But, as you saw, the same 4 pools were our busiest pools, and, within reason, because some of them were open, the lowest used pools were the same lowest used pools. Right. So there's a lot of opportunity, but it is going to be market driven and what people want to do, and what's available there, and that is part of it. Like Hobbit's Glen is never going to be a big, huge family pool because the amenities aren't there, but it serves, as it did this summer, it serves a tremendous purpose in allowing us to program for a certain population so that the other pools can be used to serve the populations that want to go there. In scenario 3, Tina, it's, I think you'll see increase across all the pools just because you have to. You're not going to have a choice because there's just, we really don't have capacity at River Hill or at Swansfield or at Kendall Ridge, to really add significantly more people during the busier times, where if you want to use a pool, you're going to have to go to one of the underutilized pools. And so that'll be forced, and it'll be left to be seen whether that's viable, and the market again will determine that.
Yeah, because again, looking at, especially say at Running Brook, a large part of that population come from the apartments. There's a really huge concentration of apartments. Very few people ever cross that little bridge, across that street to go to the pool. And it's been that way since I started at that pool in, like, I won't tell you what.
But we heard that arguments about when we had to decide which pools to open and which ones not to. Well, I have to go now. I can't just walk across the street. I have to go, 3 blocks down or whatever it may be, and I don't want to do that.
So does the concept of a neighborhood pool still stand?
In some cases, I don't think it does. In some cases, it does. Some Thunder Hill, that is their neighborhood pool, and they don't want anybody from outside their neighborhood in that pool. But the Kendall Ridges, the Swansfields, no, those are the big water parks, and they're, everybody goes there. So I think it's a mixture across, but some of them are very, very geographically, and isolated is not the right word, but for a lot of reasons they don't attract the same attendance. Marty and I have talked about things, and this is kind of getting out in the future of, do we move on from some of these pools and create some splash pads that are just generally accessible, that aren't staffed, that are available all the time, kind of like you see in the city parks, that give water features, so that we have something accessible, but then pools are also available. So you create this combination. So, I think there are different things rather than maybe, some pools may never be busy, and we do have to think of something different.
So is this something we'll be considering sort of over time, a scenario this year, but, look at more data and see how we might want to proceed differently later?
Yeah.
Okay, Dick, you're up.
Oh, thank you. I really would like to tell the staff that this is just a marvelous job, and it's obvious a lot of work went into it. So, thank you for the work, and I particularly like seeing the overhead expenses stripped out. I've always hated overhead expenses when I had P&L responsibilities. To think that I was getting billed for the corporate jet was always a bummer. But one thing I'd just like to comment on is this discussion about raising the annual charge. In all my discussions with my constituents, the one thing that I hear over and over and over again is, when I ask them what services they want or things like that, is don't raise the annual charge. People hate the annual charge, and excuse me. And anyway, I'm just warning you that if we raise the annual charge, it's just going to be a lot of anger out in the community.
Thank you. We have Eric and then Sherry.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for this presentation. It's a great graph, and I can learn a lot from it. One thing I did learn is, so the outdoor pool between scenarios 1 and 3 basically is a $1.4 million difference, but that looks like that has a waterfall effect onto the sports, which is about $600K, and also the wellness and fitness, the gym is at $2.1 million. So I assume that's due to a 33% decrease in the CA Fit and Play memberships. The question I have is, what percentage of those memberships would just convert to a OneFit membership?
So can I interrupt and just say that we have several slides that actually is going to walk through the detail?
Okay.
Get to this chart that Eric is referring to, and that might be helpful before we dive into those questions. So I'm not sure where to insert that, but we did have more detail to frame more discussion on the detail.
Mm-hmm. And I would just like to throw two things out. We're almost 2/3 of the way through our time on this topic. And I would also like the board to consider sort of two sides of this. One, at a philosophical level of what do we offer as a community organization. And then there's the nitty-gritty of the details and understanding those numbers. And while that, of course, is really important, both sides of this conversation have to happen for us to feel comfortable approving a budget. So what I'd like to propose in terms of like super detailed questions is that we may find a way to start tracking those so that if everyone, if multiple people have similar questions, we can deep dive into certain more detailed. But to Lakey's point, I didn't realize there were more slides as well. So maybe we continue through. Eric, I don't know if you have something a little higher level or if you want to sort of table your question.
That's one of the charts that's in the next slide. So
Okay.
you could ask the question when we get to the chart.
I'll ask the question when we get to the chart.
Okay, so then let me just ask Sherry, are you at a more philosophical level or are you diving deep?
Yeah. Let me think. No, I had some questions about membership. Over the years, looking at trends, I think that's sort of a high level, but I'm certainly willing to hold that question until we get more information.
Let's do that. Okay, so thank you for that. So this is really just to orient you to the material, how to use it, and to dig in further. So this is slide, this is 2-6, this is the CA-wide summary, and this is the more like a gap presentation. So this is switching to our more traditional presentation as far as the basis that's used for this. It includes depreciation and gain or losses on fixed asset disposals, and this is this is the top level where then you can drill down into the facility or programs that you're interested in. 2-6. So the one thing I just wanted to point out, we showed that changeable expenses above the fixed so that we can more clearly see which programs or services were able to cover their changeable expenses or not. Okay. So the next package will just talk a little bit about community operations. So Lakey talked about what's included in there. So this is our open space team, so it's facilities and building grounds maintenance and all the things that you're used to seeing, but in ways that look more able that you're able to relate to those, or the community can relate to those. And that's the whole of tab 4. So this is the summary. This is 4.1 of community operations. So what's in the changeable here is mainly the event services expenses, because those would be something that would fluctuate on the number of events, and also in in our most recent pandemic experience, those were the things that were dropped either by mandate or reduced when people are uncomfortable. So I wanted to point out here on that the total changeable expenses line, if you see that moving over to the third column, the variance is 182%. That reflects that increase in event activity over the current year, both for increased engagement in events, but also just a recovery back to more pre-COVID levels. Okay, next page. There's the community programs and services. So this is the wellness and fitness, the athletic clubs, the 3 fitness clubs, the sports that we're used to seeing and combined in really kind of similar ways. We pulled outdoor pools out, so it does not roll up in this summary, so you can more clearly see what's happening with outdoor pools in these 3 scenarios. So it's still under community programs and services leadership and oversight, but it's just separately reported, and that we thought was the best way to address the part of the charge that you gave us in July, just to make that really clear what that is. Okay, so then you'll see a couple stacked graphs again that.
Well, and again, the arts and culture.
Oh, yeah, I'm
archives,
sorry.
youth and team, yeah.
Yep. So on the right, we have the arts and culture, and also pulled out separately was the archives, Columbia, Maryland Archives, as essentially a facility that doesn't fit really into one of the others and would be a fixed expense. So this is back to our where the sources and uses, where does the money come from and how is it used, and I'll just let you can look at that at your leisure if you're interested in it.
I don't think we have a copy of that.
It should be in here.
It's early.
Yeah, it should be the beginning.
Yeah, I thought it was.
It is not.
No, it's not.
I'm sorry. Okay, well, we'll get you that. Thanks.
We have the high level.
The high level ones, but not the community programs.
Yeah.
Okay,
Not in
sorry
this
about that.
section.
I know these.
Okay, so scenarios 1 and 2 are the same. Scenario 3, again, you see the impact of the estimated impact, again, all based on a lot of assumptions and a lot of estimates of the visual representation of what happens or what we would project to happen if outdoor pools were free for residents. And then the next slide is what is the second handout, and this is your interest. So these, we thought this would be helpful in showing what programs and services were able to meet their changeable expenses and which ones did not. So green means it covers the expenses and red means it doesn't. Scenarios 1 and 2, the results are the same. What you can't see in here, so obviously the programs and services that don't cover their changeable expenses, the paid ones are outdoor pools and art center. The other youth and teen services, not a paid program, so it wasn't a charge from you to have it cover its changeable expenses, but it's just, it doesn't, and so it's represented here that way. In the sports column, and you'd have to dig into your binder and that's in the community programs and services, the swim center also does not cover its changeable expenses, but it wasn't enough to push the whole sports summary into red. Okay. Scenario 2 or 3, I'm sorry, basically the same programs and services don't cover their changeable expenses. We say the wellness and fitness summary, that's the summary of the 3 fitness clubs does not, and that's largely the impact of the membership revenue that we estimated would be an impact from that.
So can I ask my question now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So basically that assumes that loss of revenue assumes a 33% drop in the CA Fit and Play memberships.
Yes.
What percentage of those memberships that drop their CA Fit and Play convert to a one fit?
So, if everybody can jump in the Wayback Machine with Mr. Peabody, and I will go back to 2015. And looking around, there's actually not as many people who were here then. That's when we did the membership restructure. Right. Andy was here. And a detailed analysis like that took us like a year. So in this case, we did have to take some broad sweeps and make some broad assumptions on what we thought was going to happen. In this case, if we gave the outdoor pools for free, so then any resident Fit and Play membership, we assumed we'd automatically drop the rate because we're taking, whether they use the pools or not, they bought a membership that included 23 pools. So we've made the assumption that, and in this case, the resident play membership average is $34. And it actually would be higher within the Fit and Play because there's more family memberships than there are in the Fit and Play. But even if we just, at that $34, assume that we gave back the $34 on average, that's 23% of the Fit and Play revenue. So then that extra 10% is people quitting or not continuing. So we assume the majority would downgrade, and then there's the rest of the buffer is those who would quit.
So the majority of all Fit and Play people would downgrade?
For the residents.
For the residents. So that downgrade is 33%.
That was just downgrading. That was just taking away the cost of the play membership from their Fit and Play membership. So basically, they have a 3-club membership.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an onion. You just start feeling
let me just jump in there. So what he's saying is they would reduce the cost of the Fit and Play because their value of the Fit and Play reduces based on the fact that pools are now free.
For residents.
For residents.
Fit and Play.
And whether they use it or not, because they bought a membership, we took something out of something they bought.
So these numbers would reflect a drop in what we charge residents for the CA Fit and Play.
It covers everything. People quitting, changes in membership pricing. It covers the kind of the whole nut of the possible changes.
Okay. So it covers everything, but does it also cover the effects of increases to the one fit memberships? Because I would imagine that if people drop the CA Fit and Play, they would go into a one fit, and that would be a pretty direct.
I'm saying predominantly, I'm already assuming that we're gonna take the play away, so they're gonna stay at some higher level than a one fit.
Okay.
So if we assume more people are gonna go to one fit, that's gonna increase the loss even more.
Okay, so basically.
So that kind of folds into that extra 10% buffer that we added for people canceling, for people downgrading to the one fit.
So this is really assuming a very different membership structure than what we have now.
We would have to. We're taking away, it is an integral part of the value proposition we put out there, whether people use it or not. It is something that we put out as part of the value proposition of that membership. So yes, it would fundamentally change the play membership and the Fit and Play membership and the golf and play or 5-day golf and play membership, although there's not as many of them to be as impactful.
So could you provide those details on what the new membership structures might look like under scenario 3?
I think that's too detailed for a conversation.
Okay.
Like I said, we spent literally 2 years on the membership restructure, so we had to take some liberties to get here with using some of that knowledge to make some very large assumptions on this. If this was the direction the board wanted, we would obviously have to spend a lot of time to dig in to come up with a reasonable true approximation, and even in the amount of time we would have, that would be extremely difficult.
I just want to make one quick clarification, probably across more categories than just outdoor pools, but I think that's the one that, obviously people are discussing, but also has the biggest impact. In the amount of time we had, we made a lot of assumptions that, again, we cross-collaborated and vetted them with each other, that they were reasonable, to give you what I would characterize as what the key components are and start to get an idea of what it would look like. But Dan's last comment, I just want to kind of echo across multiple programs and facilities and services, and that is if there is a decision by the board, and again, we're going to have more discussion on November 11th, and then it's really by the 9th, December 9th, that's when we need, the guidance from the board of this is what we want to concentrate and put forward on and build a real draft budget around. So those discussions have to start to filter, we want you to dig more into this, or some of these, if we did something as massive as all outdoor pools are free, because from a business model standpoint, it's a significant change, that would be a multi-year. We would say, here's what year one looks like, and then we'd have to start exploring this on whatever, a 3-year timeline, a 5-year timeline, to really get, a membership structure redone, to understand how we're going to run the facilities, kind of all those parts and pieces, just as a quick context.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Andy's next, and then Ashley.
I think I was here.
Yeah, so Dan, if I understand correctly, when we talked about like a 58% drop and a 33% drop, that was in the income.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So what you should do on page 3-2 is when it says a 58% drop in the play membership, you should add the word income, because otherwise what people assume is you're losing 58% of the members. And from what I understand from your description, which is very, I hadn't even thought about that, and as soon as you said it, I said, oh, of course. We have to lower the price. We have to adjust the price because we now have less, we're offering less for that membership. And so the majority is somewhere around maybe 20, 24% of that income loss is actually due to the fact that we have to readjust prices. Yeah, which is not a membership loss. Yeah, which is really important, because there's a big difference between saying, oh my goodness, we're going to lose 33% of our members, like, oh no, 30% of the loss. But that's good. Thank you very much for putting that out.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. That helps me with my questions.
Yeah, so I think, if you could put in the word income, so.
Revenues.
Ashley, I'm going to let Sherry go because she was still in the queue, and we skipped over her before, and then you'll be next. Thank you. Sherry?
All right, thank you. In looking at membership, I was looking under wellness and fitness estimates. So we've seen on the dashboard that you've presented to us over the years, at least since I've been here, we've looked at trends. And so the speculation here is a 4% increase for FY22, then an 8% increase in FY23, taking into account another 3% increase in membership fee. Have I got that right?
Well, there was actually, it's 8%. The 8% is over FY23 over 22. 2022 over 21 is actually looking to be about 24%.
Right, okay, so, when I'm working with companies now, basically what I'm saying is don't look at 20. You kind of have to go back to 2019 to really, get a good perspective on that. So I understand where the figures are coming from, but to try to get us back to a base in order to understand the possible trends to the future, that's what I'm looking at. One of the things I've noticed is that there seems to be a lot of churn. And when we talk about churn, so people are coming and picking up memberships, and we get those figures, but there are also people who, for whatever reasons, they're moving out, they're taking a different job, especially now with COVID and this very volatile post-COVID period. There are a lot of people who are not working. There are a lot of families who have a member who is no longer working because they're home with kids. We are seeing a lot of volatility. So I'm expecting that we're going to see more churn rather than a linear trend upward. And I think in terms of our thinking, maybe I'm just being a pessimist here, and I hate to say this, but there are a lot of employment changes that are going on now. That's what we're seeing in terms of hiring. That's what we're seeing in terms, all the way across the board. Makes it very hard to plan on this. I think the memberships are going to be affected as well. One of the ideas that was brought up in the past, don't mean to throw this into the mix, but it is something to think about, is to make up for any lost memberships, to consider a menu process where an individual, for example, a Gen X or millennial, might be able to come in and just register for one thing that they want, rather than the grouped membership. I understand why we've had it in the past, but I suspect that business model is one of the things that's going to be strongly impacted post-COVID. So we would just like y'all to think about that. That might be something we could quickly fix, put into the mix, and do almost as a pilot, but just have that there sort of as a plan B.
Definitely can consider that, but I will say our attrition rate is actually lower than pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. We are not seeing a higher churn rate. Members who are back are staying, and they're working out more than ever.
But we're looking at the last 5 years. I'm looking at the last 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Pre-pandemic, our attrition rate currently is lower than it was pre-pandemic, and our attrition rate compared to the industry is extremely low. And we're running 1% or 2% lower than what we traditionally average than pre-pandemic. So we are not, now, membership sales, we do have ebbs and flows there, but we are not seeing the challenges in the attrition rate. It's people coming back as the different variants surge and come. That's where we're seeing the challenges. It's the new people coming in. It's not the people leaving.
Okay. Thank you. Ashley?
Yes. Unrelated to my question, I want to say I enthusiastically threw my hands up when Shari suggested the class pass sort of idea. That was something that came up on the Millennial Advisory Committee. Certainly appealing to our demographic for sure. I know lots of organizations are doing it, so if it's something CA could explore, I would be enthusiastically supportive. I had a question. Is there anywhere in this packet, or maybe something to get later, like what are our membership? Ooh, I'm getting feedback. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, you're good.
Great. Is there anywhere to see what our membership numbers are, for instance, like out of the eligible CA assessed properties, right? How many homes are enrolled in a CA membership, or how many people over the age of 18 that are living in Columbia that are enrolled, and like a breakdown. I know outdoor pool memberships usually got popular during the summer a while ago. I'm curious how many like low income memberships we have, and really what our potential is for growth, right? Like I see the percentages, but I don't know what that equates to in actual numbers.
I was going to say, that's covered in our quarterly dashboard. We could probably get her a copy of the last quarter, and then 6 weeks.
At the board meeting on December 9th, we'll go over that.
We'll go over the second quarter. But we can share the
It's on the website. We'll get to the link to where it is on the website.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just keep going. And so the next, this is the format that you're kind of used to seeing. This is tab 3-1 in your tab 3. This is the community programs and services. And then the next slide, some of you have seen, this is the outdoor pool. So as we said, we pulled that out separately, and this is to show you the impact. So one thing I just want to go make it clear, not related to the outdoor pools, but in general. So scenarios 1 and 2 are the same, because in scenario 2, when we went to try to make those red programs and services, where we said these programs and services as our current, the way we conduct them currently will not cover their changeable expenses. It didn't make sense to even try. We tested the various rates that would have to be charged, the prices that would have to be increased. And, we clearly there'd be an impact on participation that we could not estimate. So we did not go forward with that. And then,
Susan, can I ask you a question on that one? So I'm looking at the fixed and administrative costs where our annual charge basically covers everything administrative, but leaves us with $65,000. So is the understanding there that any of those services that don't cover their changeable expenses, they are funded by other services who more than cover their changeable services?
Right,
Okay.
and so that's what happened with scenarios 1 and 2. So the community programs and services combined covered those changeable expenses for even those facilities that, programs like the Art Center and the Swim Center, that couldn't do it on their own. So that's why we also thought it wasn't worth going through further, gymnastics to try to make rates that made sense when they wouldn't. So this is the outdoor pools. Again, we made a lot of assumptions here. It's very difficult to predict what people's behavior will be. Clearly that wasn't, everybody's been struggling with that moving through this pandemic, right? So, but this is our best attempt at that to determine what the impacts are. And then the last thing that I have is the capital, proposed capital. So as Lakey noted, we do see that we could move forward from 8 million to 10, which is a 25% increase, which is significant. And you'll see here that most of this is the strategic plan, the board's initiatives around sustainability, around open space and maintenance, and the capital repairs that are needed to just kind of keep things operating and decent. So not a lot of focus at all on renovations, we'll say, or at this funding level.
Oh, sorry, Andy.
No, I actually had a question on this one because the category 3, which is basically all those small things. It's only 3.5 million. That's a really low number. It's just one of our lowest numbers, I think, we've had. Just something I think the board should really consider because 3.5 million is like, the new carpet, all the minor repair, the small number of repairs and it happens all over the place. It's all our buildings as well as the community center too. And 3.5 is just, to me, a very low number for that category. And I just think the board has to be aware of that, and I think there will be an impact.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there. And so my question around that would be, does that lessen our flexibility to a level of concern? I guess is the question. Like, is that, since it is so much lower than some years past, I guess than any year past, are there concerns around our ability to meet unexpected expenses that would generally come out of that category?
So I could speak to that and say that no, except that you wouldn't get some things. Let's take an example at Oakland Mills, the restroom on the second floor that would fit into category 3. You're really looking very hard at safety issues and legal issues, not at things that are nice, very nice to have, but aren't required for safety or legal reasons. So I'm not worried about emergencies, but we might not meet expectations on aesthetics or amenities, or something like that.
And if I could add that as we plan that use of the category 3 dollars, we hold that, we manage that to make sure there's a reserve for contingencies until, that we can free up as the year goes by, but we hold out for emergencies at the beginning of the year.
Ginny and then Sherry?
Yeah, I know we don't plan on having any new construction, new buildings or anything like that, but is there anything in the existing buildings that we had in mind a couple of years ago for renovations, additions, something that would make us more competitive that we haven't done, that you would like to do, but it's not in the capital budget? Other than that.
That is a loaded question.
Yes.
Oh.
I mean, there's a lot.
I withdraw it, okay.
You know, we stopped mid-renovation at Supreme, and, you know, Columbia Gym is getting there. But those, and some of the outdoor pool stuff had to be pushed off, you know. And then there's other things, but, you know, realistically, those are things that we couldn't bring back if we wanted to. That they would be too detrimental. Now, there are things that can't be pushed off forever if this is a path we're going to continue down. But the pause, we will manage through the pause because we need to.
And I'm sure Dennis would want to add, so I'll add it for him, that, again, if there was more option, I mean, we're moving from 8 to 10, as, you know, Susan said, but, you know, there are significant projects that we would like to fund as CA across sustainability, watershed, a lot of renewable energy. I mean, there are absolutely other big projects, but I think we all looked at the capital budget in particular as we think we can do more than what we did this year, but we all don't have visibility into next year, and we're trying to be very prudent on the capital side. So it retains a focus largely on repair and maintenance. Because getting behind there has a bigger impact down the line. It is not sexy and it's not fun and it's not the really exciting move the needle projects, but I think it keeps us from getting behind. But again, these are all components. You know, you've got the detailed project list in section 10 that, you know, if the board feels differently, you know, this process is the time to discuss it.
Sherry?
Yeah. I was looking at scenario 3 and the 10% drop in golf. So there was an expectation that golf would be higher in 23 than it was in 21 and 22. And also, it looks like there was a 14% variance at Hobbit's Glen. And given the increased golf numbers that we've had, could you maybe just explain what that means?
So that's a positive variance. That means it's going to get better. That means it's going to get better. You know, and that largely comes from membership. Fairway Hills it's cooling off a little bit. It's a public play. There's the difference between membership. And so we have Hobbit's Glen is driven largely by the membership. And so therefore their play should continue at a high level, where the public courses, like I said earlier, we're starting to see them cool off. And play is starting to slow down because people actually have to go back to work. So the public play, and since they're reliant on pure round usage and not membership, we were a little bit conservative in where we were looking at based on the trends I've seen across the nation from in the golf industry.
Yeah. I was looking at that also in terms of trends and what we've seen over the last 5 years and going into the future. I actually do read the stuff that you send. And so, you know, there seems to have been a cooling off in general with the possibility that we've reached a point of maturity and saturation in this area. So this is another thing, since we had talked about before COVID hit, these kinds of issues, That might be something that we need to revisit, particularly where in capital, I think there was something about replacements or something, golf course bridge replacements coming up again. As it,
That would be in the 9 that we would keep, so that bridge would need to be replaced anyway. That's not in the floodplain. Those bridges, like Dennis's bridge.
Okay, thank you for saying that.
But that bridge that's denominated is actually one that even if we change the whole thing up, that one would be staying.
Okay, thank you for saying that, because strategically, I think this is something, again, the board's going to have to come around at some point and revisit that, and that is a costly area. So if you start to think it out, as like you said, over years, we're talking about a lot there. So, that was just another area that jumped out at me for reconsideration.
No, and Lakey and I have already talked about it, and again, it goes back to Ginny's question. It's a matter of funding. It's not free to make those changes. And besides an extensive conversation with the community, because those who live on that 9 will see a slight valuation change in their housing, so there is a conversation. But the changes take money. And so that's something that, has to be, when do we fit it in? And it is in the 10-year capital plan to kind of, as a project to look at.
Yeah, and also I do have a question here, Lakey, maybe you can answer this. My understanding is also that Fairway functions as part of the open space that CA is required to have. And so that's something that a lot of people in our community are not aware of. So it's possible to repurpose, but we have to take into consideration the acreage there and how that affects our overall requirement to maintain a percentage of open space.
Yes, that's accurate.
Okay, thank you.
So board, we are at time for this topic. If we feel like it's critical to continue, we could vote to add time on. What I'd like to propose is that I will send out a link to a board questions spreadsheet. It will have 2 tabs, one for more detailed questions and one for the more philosophical questions like, do we need to consider eliminating X, or do, those sorts of things. So like the higher level will go on one, the more detailed questions for understanding of the numbers will go on the other. With that in mind, does anyone feel strongly that we need to add more time to tonight's discussion?
Can I ask for 2 minutes? I had literally closing thoughts. But
Yeah, and did you have thoughts on it?
Actually, I'd like to ask for like another 10 minutes. So I just would like to ask the board, next Thursday, there's going to be the public session. So we've had a chance to hear. Do you think there's something that the staff needs to prepare or explain better for the public, that you've heard? Just to give them some guidance. Like we caught the thing about membership and income to kind of better explain it for the community. Is there something else? I just like 10 minutes if we could if there's anything on the board, or 5 minutes or something.
Does anyone object to adding 10 minutes onto this topic to cover expectations for next week's community meeting and ensuring that the community has the information that they need to understand where we're headed?
And give Lakey time for...
And give Lakey 2 minutes. Lakey gets 2 minutes either way, sorry, but any objections? Okay, so I'm putting 10 minutes on the clock. Andy, would you like to start?
No, I think the presentation was pretty good. You can tell for some of the questions we got today, I mean, like Alex in that may have to do a better explanation of why some of the numbers are higher or different between scenario 1, 2, and 3. And the other thing I think that need to probably explain better to the community is why scenario 1 and 2 look the same. I mean, because when you look at it, look like, well, they're the same, but yet, we discuss scenario 1 is this and scenario 2 is this, and then the numbers turn out to be exactly the same. So I think that it would be good to just say a few words about that at the community level.
Okay.
Ginny, did you have your?
Yeah, I would suggest you spend a considerable amount of time on the outdoor pools and to make it clear perhaps how residents would have available and what the capacity is, and non-residents, what the impact may be on non-residents and thus the swim teams, et cetera. Just really understand what this means in reality if we vote for this and what will happen, not only economically, but also from a practical point of view of day-to-day, swimming and those other non-residents that make up some swim teams. A lot of it is non-residents. Okay.
Eric?
Yeah, so when we're talking about raising the CA charge rate 6 cents, I think people are going to be very interested in what that CA subsidy is. So there's a couple of allusions to it in the packet already, but I think people are going to have more questions on where is that CA subsidy today and where is it going to be in scenario 3.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree with that, but I also think there should be a broader discussion around the potential to increase or not increase the annual charge to get a pulse check. If there's huge, riots happening, if we mention raising the annual charge, then we probably want to reconsider that. If people are like, it doesn't really matter to me, then that's one thing. I think 2, impacts on memberships, just making sure that they understand those percentages in there, because to Andy's point, I think some of them aren't meaning necessarily what people may be interpreting them to mean. So, I think it's important for them to understand those percentages. And then I think the other big thing is that they understand that we are not voting on one of these scenarios. This is not an either or sort of situation. Right. We are voting on components of. So I think it's really important for people to understand that this was an exercise for us to be able to see the breakdown of these various pieces. And so we would want input on what they value in terms of what they are getting from their community and from their community association, so that that we can see very clearly where their priorities lie, and not that it has to be one of these. So, Sherry.
Yeah, I think, we've discussed it here, but I don't think it's generally understood in the community that the annual charge rate has fluctuated over time, and it has been much higher in the past, and also that CA has raised bonds in the past. We don't have to get into a whole big thing. Ooh, sorry, I keep hitting that. But there have been lots of different ways that CA has addressed future needs. And I think if we haven't raised the rate in 16 years, that's something that the community does need to know. Nobody's happy about raising anything, but knowing that it has been 16 years would be an important piece of information.
Jess, and then Lynn.
Mine is very quick, and I'm sure this will be clear, but just that these scenarios and anything having to do with them are sort of, that they're not real, that this is not a proposed budget, that this is just, yeah, exactly, a thought experiment, kind of playing with the numbers to see how they relate to each other, so that people don't get hung up on either the math or the, well, what does this mean, for our budget? You're going to cut this much and this, that. No, it's sort of just for our understanding.
Lynn?
Yeah, one thing we might be prepared to address, though, is when you look at the annual charge, the lien rate, we've had about a 20% increase in real estate values. And that's a raise right there. Mm-hmm. Not immediately this year, but for the next assessment cycle, it'll be up significantly, and they're projecting yet another 10% next year. So, again, I think we need to take that into consideration. I'm sure somebody will raise that.
That's a good point. Dick or Ashley online, do you have any comments? So I want to just make sure that you heard us correctly. We're talking about what we may need to clarify for when we share this with the community.
No, I think we've covered this pretty well.
Thank you. Ashley, anything? Okay. All right, any final comments on that? All right, Jenny, you got 30
On
seconds.
the annual charge, you're talking about going to 74%, right? And the top is 75%?
74 cents.
What?
Cents per dollar.
Yeah, but I mean, that's, you don't have much room should expenses go up next year with minimum wage and other things. So they need to understand that. Okay.
Okay, Lakey, you're up.
Okay, so
Timing you have 2 minutes.
you've hit on, it's going to be fast. I'm going to echo what Janet Evans already said. So I wanted to just reframe kind of as we move to the next board meeting on November 11th that we're moving from the scenario test cases, which is really kind of the details and visibility. Next week on the 4th is really about hearing from the community. The online exercises are all about the priorities, as you were just indicating. And then the pivot is really that the CA board, what we need the feedback on the 11th so that by the 9th, by December 9th, the CA board is clear about these are the kinds of outcomes that we want. These are the kinds of priorities. These are the kind of programs we want to increase. These are the kind of programs that we think we might want to decrease. And then it really goes back to staff to draft real budget recommendations. How do we get there, right? What are the moving pieces as people that do this as operations every day? Here's our recommendation to get to the outcomes you want to see. So then this last one is just to remind you, the bigger process is on the right, but for anybody engaging, I'm going to send this to the board tomorrow in an email format, just a quick summary. The online survey is, we have a short link, columbiaassociation.org/budget. That online survey is there. It is live now, either literally during this meeting or by the time we get done. We got it all teed up to go live during the meeting. So between now and next Thursday, people can take it. So please share that widely. We have the public session on November 4th. I appreciate the feedback on how to shape that presentation. Again, it will not be a direct repeat of tonight. This is about engagement and evolution. There'll continue to be the board meetings as are listed. And then that landing page, columbiaassociation.org/budget, we will continue to provide updates there, right? So as we prep materials, we will put it there. As we have meetings, the recordings will go there. So that is something that, you can continue to share as a resource. So that is it.
Thank you.
So 120 seconds?
Pretty close. And can this deck be sent out to the board, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Excellent. Well, thank you, everyone, for
Make a quick comment about how much I love that you are soliciting online feedback from residents and giving them a way to voice what they want without having to come to a meeting. I mean, the amount of transparency that we're seeing here is just, it's wonderful. I can't thank you guys enough for the timeline, the structure, everything. It's right on.
Thank you. It has been a collaborative team effort, and everybody has been willing to do it differently, so it's been a great experience.
Okay, next section is the questions only. So if you have questions on President's report, Inter Arbor Trust report, or tracking form, or board priority review. Jenny and then Sherry.
Just a comment on the page 3 of the President's report, replacement of barcode scanners at major facilities. Thank God.
You know what, Jenny? I thought of you when I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a game you play when you go in with your card. It may work, it may not work. The staff pick it up and they try. This is just Zoom. It's fantastic. And the other thing about the Hispanic Heritage Month, if you could just, it's Oakland Mills Local Leadership Team, so it's 2 L's, that's all.
Okay.
But congratulations.
Sherry?
Yeah. I noticed that it said that the annual charge balance was 8% lower. in 2021, and I was wondering, why do you think this has happened? Do you have any idea what we're looking at long-term?
No, receivable balance.
Oh, accounts receivable, yes, yes,
no,
I'm sorry.
That's a good thing.
It's a good yes, yes.
So this is a good thing. This is because of the team, Lynn's team under her leadership and motivation has been working very hard with the larger payers and also the traditionally slow payers. So we're really targeting and working with people who are traditionally slow to pay. So that's why it's you know.
I think this is something you started last year or the year before.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you're thinking of the lien, the lien process. So,
Okay.
So.
Okay, but it's wonderful. Okay. So that.
We're calling people and checking in.
Yeah.
And reminding them.
Yeah. And I also just wanted to say I really appreciate the Director of Purchasing taking the steps to do that kind of outreach to minority businesses in terms of recruitment, in terms of staffing. I think that is great for CA. I think we're going to get a lot of new people in, and that means we can move forward on goals and objectives for moving this program forward. So thank you very much for that.
Any other questions from that section? I'd like to, actually, I see that Danae Barr has joined us online. Danae, I know that you were not online for Resident Speak Out. I don't know if you were having trouble getting in, but if you would like to speak, I'd like to give you the opportunity now.
Mute.
You're on mute right now.
Danae, you're
Yes,
muted.
are you
muted?
He's muted.
You're muted.
Oh, I'm sorry about
There
that.
you go.
Yeah, I'm coming out of several Zooms. You know how we have to juggle all that.
So you have 3 minutes, okay?
Right. Very good. Very good. No, I really was going to show up tonight to just be to talk up in support of the Columbia Sister Cities program. I have been a resident of Columbia, Maryland since 1975 and involved with the Sister Cities program roughly from 1980 onward, and I currently serve on the Tamagana Sister City Committee and the Leon China Sister City Committee, and I see firsthand how much the community enjoys the type of events that we have. It brings people together. You know, our demographic is very multicultural. I say that the whole world is represented in Columbia, Maryland. And so I hear tonight that this was more a talk on the capital budget. And so I can further make my comments at the public hearing on the November the 4th, is it?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you participating.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the conversation.
Okay. Next up, any proposed new topics? Tina.
Undesign the red line. I think we should all go. It's an exhibit at the library. They do a tour. It takes about 90 minutes.
Would you like to send out a survey to the board for time?
Doodle pool? Can I do
Any way you want.
Anywhere I want. Okay,
Yep.
we are going to assume that I have the technical savvy to do a doodle pool.
Well, you can just, you can say,
figure that
pick
out.
one of these, but I'm just suggesting.
Can you do a doodle pool? I will work with my partner. from
Excellent.
Cambridge Ridge, and we will
I just,
Thank
you know,
so much.
yeah, okay.
Hot diggity.
I will make a quick comment that I took the senior team actually this week over for our senior team meeting and did it at Design the Red Line and did a tour. And everyone learned a lot, and I think it also helped our conversation, particularly the kind of organization we are. We shape place and community every day here. You know, our policies and business practices shape how Columbia functions and who has opportunity and who doesn't. So I think Undesign the Red Line gives a lot of perspective for the roles we all have at CA. So I would just echo, I think that's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other new topics? Okay. I just wanted to thank particularly Susan and Lynn, but everyone who has contributed to the budget. I know this was a very, very heavy lift, and that
it provides so much more granular information than we've ever had before. So hopefully, anyone who hasn't been part of the budget process, you recognize, or, you can appreciate the fact that you have more information to work with. And those of us who have been through the budget process before, I know we appreciate understanding at a deeper level where these things come from. So thank you to everyone who helped with that. We covered a lot of information tonight. So if, as I said, I will send out a link for board questions and for the, higher level, more philosophical questions. So please look for that. And thank you, Jess, for timing tonight. Obviously it helps all of us to keep things on track. So I just wanted to call out our next meeting is Thursday, November 11th. This is the only November meeting, so anything that needs to pop up, I'll be looking at the agenda this week to look at any of the topics that we have, as a board, have said, like, hey, we think we need to address this in another meeting, just to see if there's opportunity there. We will continue the discussion of the budget scenarios, obviously, so continue to dive into that. And I think tonight's presentation was super helpful in providing that context for some of the things that might not have been entirely clear. Also, it's coming up on the end of the month, so we are, as a board, going to be doing Lakey's mid-year review. I am attempting to do a Google form for that, so we'll see how that goes, because that's part of this process, is experimenting and making sure that we are capturing the information in a way that makes it able to be aggregated and provide that feedback. So I encourage you to consider that carefully. We'll have 2 weeks to do it, so I'm asking that it be back by the middle of November so that people don't forget about it before the holidays. Yeah, so that. Yeah, and congratulations to Lakey for 6 months already.
One back.
Yeah.
Like I've been here 6 years already.
She has multiple additional gray hairs to attest for each month of her tenure. Okay, so next packet agenda will be posted November 5th, just FYI. So thank you, everyone. All right. Andy.
Bennett, just wanted to ask, how did Long Reach's 50th go?
Well, I went Friday night, and it was kind of, it was very fun, but it was not heavily attended. I think Lynn was there in the afternoon, and it sounded like it was a great time. And then I went back, and it had been rained out. Yeah.
I was there on Saturday until it started to rain, and it got actually pretty busy, even in the village center part. It was not like when it first started, it wasn't super well attended, but there were children over in the Magicians area in the village center, and it was also a really great opportunity for the Manic Art, yeah.
Right.
Manic Art, yeah. It was a great opportunity. There were a bunch of people that went in there and toured that as well.
Yeah, thank you. I was very disappointed because I thought it would start back up again after the rain stopped, but it did not. It was all closed.
We got a lot of visits at the Art Center. I'll report that, just, because we were participating, obviously, but we got a lot of visits, so.
And there are Halloween, I understand that there's a Halloween event that CA is doing over at the
Sports park.
The sports park.
Trunk or treat, plus
Yeah.
mini golf. Who else has that? Might be other trunk or treat.
True.
Not with
So
mini golf.
that's another thing to make sure the villages know about that.
Yes, yes.
And I will be there, because anyone wants.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Well, I'm going to be there with Girls on the Run.
Is anyone still paying attention? Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I will move we adjourn.
Second.
I'll second it.